It's the biggest single education reform, the most important education reform taking place in the world today.
The government is introducing a new qualification. Its aim is to bring together the educational demand of the modern workplace and the more traditional school curriculum.
That's very much a laudable aim, but it's worth saying that it is a very difficult marriage to achieve.
One of the most important issues is, will it be valued as much as GCSEs and A-levels?
Parents might just think it's just another way for the government to treat dumb students.
If our education system is to do its job properly, our young people must be prepared for life beyond school. But some people believe that this isn't happening.
We're in a system where I think 45% of young people don't get 5 GCSEs at grade A to C with English and Maths, which is the DFES standard for productivity in employment. We are failing these young people, and something needs to be done about it.
Young graduates also see shortfalls in their own education.
I think the difficulty was in my school it was just a straightforward curriculum. There was nothing creative or nothing looking into the future, basically.
I perhaps didn't realise that studying science didn't mean that you had to be a scientist. I can write about science, I can talk about science, I can do loads of different things.
And even students themselves are concerned about whether they are getting the education they need.
A-level exams are more of a test of memory more than anything else.
Because people don't want to do like maths like algebra. People want to do it in like a practical term.
You're told you're doing this and then you just get bored and you don't want to really do it and you don't get to show what you can do.
The government believes the answer to this problem is the new diploma, targeted at 14 to 19-year-olds. Working closely with industry, they have created a new curriculum that they feel will better prepare young people of all abilities for the world of work. But with so much change on the horizon, how do the teaching profession feel?
Well, I think there's an element of trepidation because everything that's new is treated with some scepticism.
What we don't want to see are the introduction of the diplomas being associated with an enormous increase in bureaucracy and workload for teachers working in schools.
School Matters looks into what this new qualification is all about and explores some of the challenges it faces if it is to be successfully introduced into our schools. The pilot for these diplomas starts in September 2008, but some areas are already ahead of the game. We've come down to Medway in Kent, who are hosting a conference for representatives from schools, colleges and local businesses, all of whom will be affected by the new reforms.
On challenge and on quality.
Steve Williams is leading Medway's diploma programme.
I think what is really needed is a set of qualifications that are neither entirely academic, nor are they so specifically vocational that they narrow the choices that are open to young people. What is needed is a set of qualifications that are vocationally relevant, but which have serious academic underpinning.
I want to talk about the current reforms.
And this is exactly what Ken Boston, here to give the keynote speech, believes he can deliver. He is also keen to put to rest any misconceptions.
Changes to GCE. I think it's very important to understand what these diplomas are about. They are not the answer to Leach. They are not going to address skills shortages. They're going to prepare a community which is better able to meet skills shortages and skill up. We are now at a point where we've had 2 major reports and government has responded to them. We had Mike Tomlinson's report on the introduction of a new qualification, the diplomas. We've also had Lord Leach's report on skills shortages and how they can be addressed. The diplomas which are being introduced aren't exactly what Mike Tomlinson was recommending, but there's a lot of Tomlinson in them. And they will use a new form of curriculum, an industry-driven curriculum, to provide a general education for 16 to 19-year-olds. If you wish to.
Employer associations have been deeply involved in developing the diplomas, like the manufacturing company JCB.
I think the diploma is going to be meeting a very critical need, because there is a mismatch at the moment between some of the requirements of business and industry at a pretty fundamental level and some of the education provision we have.
However, people are worried that the whole range of businesses have not been consulted.
And our perception is that the sector skills councils who run the diploma development partnerships are dominated mainly by big businesses, and the reason for that is simply that big businesses have more time to be engaged in the sort of stakeholder groups that the diploma development partnerships are.
With the curriculum based around industry sectors, the pupils will spend a lot of time in a workplace, either real or simulated. So how will a diploma course actually take shape?
Everybody would do the generic bit of the diploma, which would be the English, Maths, ICT, the core personal learning and thinking skills, the skills of learning to learn, of being reflective, of working in teams, all of those sorts of things. You then have a principal learning component, which would be, the core of that diploma. So in the engineering diploma is all about engineering and the skills and knowledge you need to be successful in that very broad sector. And then there's a third area, which is additional specialist learning, which is a choice between things which could broaden out your diploma. So it might be doing a modern foreign language if you're an engineer, and then also a choice of doing things which are more specialist. So if you're an engineer, it might be mechanical engineering. If you're clear you want to specialise in that.
The critical thing to realise is that the diplomas are an education program, they're not a training program. They're to do with cognitive development, to do with creating higher order thinking and problem solving skills. They have similar objectives to any other education program, but they're using a different sort of curriculum.
With this new curriculum being implemented, what effect will it have on the teacher?
We do want to create a new feel to the experience for the learner. And so the way the teaching would change is it would be taking what is just good teaching, and so in some ways it won't change for very many teachers, but relating the academic, relating the theoretical to the practical, to the real world, and picking up on some of the practical skill that they might be learning through instruction and relating that back to the academic.
We've come to North London, where the collaborative group the Edge Learner Forum have got together to discuss the new reforms.
I guess a real positive point about introducing these diplomas is that it really prepares young people for the world of work, where it's practical and it's relevant. And I think A-levels in some respects do that to a degree, because they teach you a lot of skills. But I think sometimes they can miss the point of actually teaching you things that are relevant to the real world and into professions that you might aspire to enter into.
I wanted to become an accountant, but I changed my mind because I thought to myself, I don't want to be in the same system that I've been in primary school, if you get what I mean.
This is all great. I think this is sort of great, but even some subjects now that are seen as A-levels, they're not in university. They're like seen as soft subjects. Like if you take media studies, it's recognised as an A-level, but if you go to some universities, they're gonna say, "Oh, that's like a soft subject." They won't really take you seriously. So to have this is something, it's going to take a very, very long time for it to be recognised.
I know a lot of people who also think that A-level exams are more of a test of memory more than anything else. So it's not actually, you're not actually demonstrating all that you've learned over the couple of years that you studied a particular subject. If you're honest, I mean, for me, like, you kind of revise all these things and then after the exam you just forget it. I mean, it hasn't really left a lasting impact as if a real world of kind of experience kind of would do.
This diploma thing is going to be big because it gives young people, I know there's a lot of young people in Hackney that will like this kind of thing, because it will give them one, responsibility at a young age, and two, for them to actually
get up and
more have a earlier impact in their life.
Ken Boston and the powers that be are determined that the diploma programme starts off as a pilot, being small enough to manage the risks, and then expanding, building on its successes.
This is why I think it's very important that we do look at the next couple of years with these 3 tranches of diplomas as essentially an introductory period, a pilot period. I think that if we were to flood the country, as it were, with instant take-up into diplomas in 2008 and 2009, we would run the risk of debasing the currency, which we're trying to build right from the start.
From 2008, all 14 diplomas will be gradually introduced, with them becoming an entitlement for every pupil by 2013. With a diploma not always focusing around the classroom, some of the learning will be more appropriate for a college or workplace environment. To help offer this, schools, colleges, local employers and higher education have been asked to set up consortia.
There are different models of practice emerging throughout the country. What we've got to do is make sure that we focus on the very best models of practice, the very best places where collaboration is happening, where schools and colleges and other education providers are working together, and see how they're doing that in a way that isn't increasing the organisational burdens.
The introduction of a collaborative programme brings a number of challenges for all involved.
We have the challenge of sorting out the timetable, the challenge of sorting out transport and access arrangements, and the challenge of ensuring that the staff involved in the programme are appropriately qualified and experienced for them to be able to teach on such a vocationally related programme.
But these logistical problems aren't always entirely new. Some local authorities already have consortium arrangements in place to operate programmes such as the Young Apprenticeship Scheme.
In Medway, we're quite fortunate that we've been having a consortium arrangement now for 4 or 5 years, where we've been interacting with different schools and the local college to provide courses. So we see this initiative as being one which just broadens the experiences we've had before. We're confident that we're going to be able to deal with most of the issues which we believe will be for us as an authority because of the working groups that have been coming together, one of them being timetabling, where there is work on a common timetable, but also transport, getting the youngsters from one school to another school, from school to college and vice versa.
Mid-Kent College in Medway is a centre for an existing consortia. Students come from all over Medway to pursue different areas of the curriculum in more of a simulated work environment.
I'll try it with 2.
Claire Griffiths teaches a visual arts class on the Young Apprenticeship Scheme, which brings together students from 4 different schools in the area to develop skills such as graphics, art, photography and fashion design.
I'm a practising ceramicist and I've worked for many years and now teach a broad range of art design subjects. We do have lots of other specialist teachers here as well who offer their specialism, and the students have a good idea about what they will be working at in industry later on, and they are encouraged to aim higher than I think they probably would have done in a school.
The aim for the diploma, like the Young Apprenticeship Scheme, is that it will work on the basis that some students are more motivated by a simulated work environment than they would be by their conventional school environment.
I like it, like you're treated like an adult for once, and there's a lot more you can do. Like there's the facilities and there's the equipment. Like at school you're always rushing around trying to get the equipment before everyone else can, and then here there's enough equipment for you to actually do your work without it being nicked.
Programmes such as the Young Apprenticeship Scheme have prepared consortia for some of the logistical problems, but the diploma raises many more.
One of the concerns has been having enough staff who will have the competencies recognised by industry to be able to develop those vocationally relevant aspects with minimal training. We're also concerned about visitors who come into school from the perspective of police checks, the Criminal Records Bureau checks that have to be done. What is going to happen there? Are they going to be expected to be accompanied whenever they're in school by members of the teaching profession? Are we going to be treating colleagues who come in from industry as equals in the classroom? There are some questions that need to be raised there, and they all have resourcing implications.
Another issue is work experience, which will be an important part of the diploma course.
The oxygen sensor. And of course, work experience brings with it a number of interesting aspects of concern, notably health and safety of our youngsters, the environments they go into, checking of those environments, and the pressure on organisations such as our local education business partnership to ensure that the checks are all being carried out. There's also a pressure on schools to make sure that this is happening and it's happening properly. So we don't want our youngsters going into working environments and finding they're not returning.
The problems of implementing the diploma are magnified when it comes to rural areas, something which is a particular concern to the president of the Association of School and College Leaders, Malcolm Trobe, who is also head of a school in Wiltshire.
We have a number of issues to do with the contact with local institutions. Our nearest secondary school within the authority is over 10 miles away. The nearest college is that we work with is some 16 miles away. And we have a number of logistical problems involving transport and timetabling. So we're waiting really to see how the diplomas pan out on the pilots, and we want to see a lot more detail about the course content before we look to change our existing programs.
Ironing out logistical issues are not the only problems that diplomas will face. Acceptance as a credible qualification will be key to their success.
I think the main thing about making the diplomas successful is how they communicate the idea to society, to the parents, to the students. Because if you don't make people aware and understand how the diplomas work and how they are equivalent to A-levels and high qualifications, then people will ignore it and it won't be successful.
Take the GMVQ for instance. People do it, and it does lead them on to work in businesses, etc. But somehow it's not as high compared to the normal A-levels and normal GCSEs.
Those people who may not be academic, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're dumb.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that they're dumb.
Yeah.
It just means that they're not good at maths or English. So I think that these things, they not only open a door for those who are intelligent in other ways, but they allow them to explore differences and allow them to use the skills that they do have and enhance them.
Say I went to Cambridge now and I've got a diploma and I've got one other A-level or something like that, but then my friend comes with me and she's got 5 A-levels at grade A. You think they're going to look at me over her?
Universities know that both students and parents are looking to them to give the diplomas credibility, or they will not be able to compete with A-levels. The Director General of the Russell Group, which represents 20 of Britain's elite universities, is well aware of this.
Sometimes people have the conception that it's only A-levels that Russell Group universities are used to dealing with, but in fact we take students with qualifications ranging from the ABITUR to the IB. So we certainly welcome any new qualification that really does equip students with the skills and the knowledge so that they can really flourish in our universities. But that's a really important point. We do really want to help shape these new qualifications to ensure that they do have a sufficiently robust academic content.
A lot of universities have been involved in specifying, well, actually, what do we need from, you know, a candidate to study engineering, let's say, from somebody who's done an engineering diploma. So they've been very closely involved with that. So we've got a lot of support from them, and we're working with a number of universities to make sure, you know, that the diplomas give them what they're looking for.
No Vice-Chancellor, no admissions tutor should be expected to say immediately now, we will take the diplomas, and we'll take, say, as many people doing diplomas as do A-levels. These diplomas have got to compete. There's a market out there. They're not a protected species from the start. It's a qualification which has to make its way in the world.
It's not just universities that diplomas need to win over, but also those schools that believe that there is only one real gold standard, and that's GCSEs and A-levels.
We must also see that the diplomas are taken up widely. They are not vocational qualifications, they are broad-based diplomas. Therefore, we will need to see these taken up by grammar schools and selective institutions, and we'll need to see them taken up by the independent school sector in order for them to be successful.
With many schools in both the grammar and independent sectors adopting a wait-and-see policy, the government's marketing of the diploma will prove crucial to its success.
We've been doing some work at making sure that people who work in education have a better understanding of what the diplomas are all about. We're at the point now where we want to start raising the awareness with parents and pupils, because obviously, particularly at the younger age range, at 14, many learners will be guided by their parents and their parents' ambitions for them. We need to make sure that universities are clear that they will value them, the employers are clear that they will value them, so that in turn parents are clear that they will be valued and that they're a good qualification for their children to do. And very important that the message is clear that these are for all abilities. These are not vocational qualifications, they're not academic qualifications, they are the best of both worlds.
Speak quite softly and quite husky. And then
It's not just students, parents and higher education that have to be persuaded. The diploma will never work unless the teaching profession is behind it.
A serious issue for our members, and feedback that we get continually from teachers, is that the workload and the assessment burdens in particular associated with the new diplomas have to be manageable and have to make sure that they're not distracting teachers from what it is that they're there to do. If they're spending a huge amount of time concentrating on administering the diplomas, on filling in forms, on doing things that aren't related to teaching and learning, then ultimately it's the young people that are going to lose out.
Well, I think there's an element of trepidation because everything that's new is treated with some scepticism. But I think that once teachers get to know and understand what it involves, then people who are interested will be able to work with it really effectively. And I think it provides an interesting opportunity for teachers to develop their skills as well as students.
There's a whole range of issues if we're trying to change the learning experiences that youngsters have in terms of preparing teachers and giving teachers the time to prepare the learning materials to go with the programs. And we have, for the pilot institutions, a relatively short time to do that.
But the government believes there will be enough training provided for the teaching profession. They are proposing a programme beginning in September 2007, which will consist of 3 days of training, including time with industry professionals. This will be backed up by a set of online learning materials and personal coaching.
Our key aim is that there isn't a teacher in the country who's asked to teach these new diplomas who hasn't been trained. So we want to make sure that every single teacher who's asked to do something new has had the training they need to do that well.
It's a dense solution, and so they will sink to the bottom.
What we're actually talking about is 3 days of real input, focused input of professional development, but with these online learning materials in support, with support to build a professional learning community with expert coaches, with leading professionals in each region, working with those teachers to make sure actually they can work together, share experience, share practice.
Teachers will be working with instructors, will be working with employers who do in-work training. And I think it's a really exciting opportunity for teachers to just develop their own skills and to develop the relevance of what they've been doing so well for so long, but into those real work settings.
The aim is to encourage teaching staff to do their own work experience in industry to help with their understanding of the new curriculum, although this may well have to be done in the teacher's own time.
I think it's really important that more teachers do get experience of the world of work outside of the teaching profession. I think it's that, as I said, there is a certain divide between business and the education establishment, and it's really important that more teachers understand what the world of commerce and industry actually is like. I think it would really help to break down barriers.
Teachers getting experience and some understanding of what goes on in industry is important, but it really is important that industry understands the pressures faced by schools, what schools have to deliver, and the way that schools in the 21st century work. I mean, many teachers come across people working in industry with very antiquated ideas about what happens in a school, about how learning's organised.
The diploma is reputedly the biggest single educational reform going on in the world today. Despite the challenges this will undoubtedly bring, its supporters are convinced that it's got what it takes to be more successful than previous efforts in this direction.
Sometimes employers haven't been fully engaged, sometimes universities haven't been fully engaged, and we've got beyond that already. We've got that commitment. And sometimes it's been seen as a bolt-on, so it's not going to be a core part of the curriculum, and again, we're already well beyond that. So I'm absolutely confident that we're in the right place.
This is contemporary British industry being translated into curriculum in the classroom, not for training purposes, but for educational purposes. And that's a big change and big breakthrough.
However, Britain has been trying to raise the status of vocationally geared learning for years. Only time will tell whether we are ready to do justice to such a qualification.